So, welcome everyone to this FWR webinar, Integrating Water Management to Enable Sustainable Growth. This webinar has been organised by the Foundation for Water Research, an independent community of professionals from across the water sector and related scientific specialisms. The community comes together for deliberative discussion to support the development of interdisciplinary solutions to water challenges. The community provides guidance and strategic thought leadership for the IES's water activities and collaborates with the wider IES families on issues related to land, air, and policy implementation. I'm delighted today to be joined by four speakers from the Environment Agency. I'm going to do a very brief introduction before handing over to them. So firstly, Dan Curtis, who has worked in the Oxford to Cambridge team for 5 years and leads the delivery of their integrated water management programme. Kerry Lewis, who leads the team in identifying gaps in evidence, ways to improve working and scoping out new projects. Juliet Savage, who works on communications and engagement as a specialist at the Environment Agency, and Brianne Valley, technical specialist in the Oxcam team for over 2 years. As usual, at the end of their presentation, we will have some time for questions, and you can submit these at any point during the presentation using the Q&A function that you should be able to find at the bottom of your screen. I will then read these out on your behalf later on. A massive thank you to all of you for joining, and I'll hand over to you, Dan. Thanks.
Thanks, Ethne. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniel Curtis, and I'm the Integrated Water Management Lead in the Environment Agency's Oxcam team. Today, I'll be giving you an overview of our ongoing Integrated Water Management Programme before handing over to Kerry, Jules and Brianne to share some projects examples and an overview of our comms projects we're developing to share learning from our work. As Ethne said, we'll then have 15 minutes to take questions together at the end. However, before I introduce our integrated water management programme, let me give you a quick overview of the geography, its economic potential and the role of the environment to support this. So the Oxford to Cambridge area was recognised as a place of great economic and innovation potential by the National Infrastructure Commission back in 2017, and it's been a focus for our Environment Agency team for a number of years now. Working as one DEFRA group, we've collaborated closely with government and partners to shape its future since 2018. The corridor is a leading area for research, technology and growth, and is made up of 5 ceremonial counties: Oxfordshire, Bedfordshire, Buckinghamshire, Cambridgeshire and Northamptonshire. And this spans 4 of our Environment Agency operational areas. The region's home to over 4 million residents and is already contributing 44 billion to the economy in goods and services. In January this year, the Chancellor reaffirmed commitment to the growth corridor with ambitions to help kickstart growth and unlock up to 78 billion for the UK economy by 2035. This is very much about capitalising on science, innovation, excellence and turning world-class research into commercial success. But now onto the evolving governance and the role of the environment. As the slide suggests, government has evolved over time, and this work is now led by a dedicated growth unit hosted by HM Treasury and led by Lord Patrick Vallance. Its central pillars, as shown here, are innovation and technology, connectivity through projects like East West Rail, placemaking through new homes, and investment in infrastructure in new sectors. Now, although the environment isn't a formal work stream, it's recognised as essential. The team's work to develop a natural capital baseline and account for Oxcam outline that the region's natural capital is worth up to 2.27 billion annually. And from a natural assets perspective, the region contains 20,000 hectares of sites of special scientific interest, over 5,700 kilometres of rivers and streams, and that's 11% of the world's chalk streams. But 25% of the land is at risk of flooding. So although the governance has evolved, our team's focus has remained constant, and that's very much embedding the environment alongside growth. We've built evidence bases and developed and trialled innovative approaches to tackle environmental pressures and encourage new ways of working to ensure the corridor delivers not just economic success, but sustainable success, balancing innovation with nature and keeping water and the environment at the heart of planning. And as one of the key constraints to growth across the corridor, with acute water resource challenges in Cambridge and water quality constraints in Oxford, water promises to be featured heavily in future plans. And that's why our ongoing work on integrated water management is more important than ever to support sustainable, resilient growth within the corridor. Jules, if you could just move on to the next slide, please. So just some background and explain why our integrated water management programme is being delivered in the area. As I've just mentioned, the area's significant water pressures are widely recognised, and these will only be exacerbated with growth ambitions for the corridor and impacts of a changing climate. A strategic utilities review, together with emerging issues across the geography around water planning and capacity, confirm the need to look at the water system as a whole in a more joined up way. Add to that the integrated water management ambitions set out in the Environment Act, alongside supporting local environmental principles, and the case for an integrated approach became clear. That's what led us to taking forward this exciting programme on behalf of DEFRA Group. Our goals and objectives of the programme are simple but ambitious: to design a framework, so an integrated approach for managing water across systems, as shown in the image here, supply, demand, wastewater, flood risk, water quality, as well as recognising the links to land use within the Oxford to Cambridge geography, and to test and trial and new ways of working at scale. Excuse me. So then lessons learned can help shape future guidance, wider planning policy and government interventions beyond the OXCAM area. Ultimately, through this programme, we want to demonstrate the value of integrated water management, and we're working to develop a model approach that shows the benefits of integration and captures lessons learned from our tests and trials, approaches that support environmental improvement and build greater resilience to climate change in the Oxford to Cambridge area. And by planning ahead and looking at water strategically alongside development and natural environment, we can ensure that we have clean and plentiful water in the right place at the right time. And in doing so, unlock the wider benefits for people, nature, and the economy. Thanks, Jules. This slide is really to highlight the breadth of water planning, so just let me catch up there, and emphasise that integrating water management is a complex challenge with a range of disjointed and I guess occasionally incoherent plans and processes, all of which influence the state of our water environment. Our focus has been and continues to be on understanding these elements and determining how best to bring them together through tests and trials across the geography. And we aim to do this in the most effective way, recognising there's a lot of work ongoing in this space already, in a way that builds on understanding and experience and adds value to existing practices and ways of working. And in doing so, we deliver benefits to the economy and society while advancing our ambitions for the water environment, working towards the triple bottom line, if you like. And if we do this well, we'll support delivery of a healthier, more resilient water environment, advance ambitions and review recommendations to join up management of the water system and manage the water system in a more holistic way. And, through more collaborative, better coordinated working that builds shared understanding, supports more informed decision making, and helps deliver real tangible benefits. So the next slide really, the next slide, starts to kind of demonstrate the approach that we're taking to support our transition from our kind of existing ways of working, if you like, to business as usual, towards a more integrated approach to water management through our work in the geography. So early on in the programme, we recognised the scale and complexity of our ambition, and that led us to break down our work into a series of projects and focus on building evidence and piloting innovative approaches. So helping us to build a clearer, sufficiently detailed, I think it's the key point, understanding of what works, so that we can then use our learning to help shape drivers for change and develop a more practical pathway towards integration. So to communicate our outcomes clearly and share progress effectively with stakeholders, we've grouped our projects under the 4 themes shown at the bottom of the slide. So first, exploration. These are pilot projects responding to identified research and development needs, and this is innovative work. So I don't know if you can bring up the next part of the slide, Jules, but for example, this would include our Blue Lens pilot in Bedfordshire, which supports local nature recovery strategies to better consider the water environment, and our rainwater harvesting work in non-domestic settings, which explored the potential benefits of rainwater harvesting to both water resources and in reducing storm overflows. Secondary statutory water planning. Here we focused on improving coordination and effectiveness through our Rethinking Water Planning project, and also better anticipating future non-household water demand, which Kerry will introduce in a moment. And thirdly, placemaking. So maximising planning for water, which has been a primary focus for this theme as a project. But this is also complemented by ongoing work to take a place-based approach to joining up drainage, wastewater, and surface water management planning, which Brianne will cover in more detail shortly. There's a couple of example slides there on kind of scopes for future work, which we can always share a bit later on, because I think we're probably running slightly behind now. There's a couple of links there to the bottom in terms of the Integrated Water Management Hub, which Jules will introduce you to in a moment. And just to flag, we've also undertaken some program evaluation for the work, I say, to continually improve our work and kind of support that kind of change that we're trying to achieve as a team. But I think I'll kind of probably stop there, Jules. I think we're running slightly behind the time, and so I'll hand over to Kerry, who'll introduce you to some of our work on forecasting future water demand.
Thank you, Daniel. Can I get a thumbs up that someone can hear me? Yeah, thumbs up. Brilliant. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well today and have managed to get some lunch. I'm just going to talk about one of our projects, the Future Water Demand Project. If you could jump onto the next slide, Jules, I'll just give a kind of an overview of the project, I guess. So the project statement really is to try and improve demand forecasting in the non-household sector. So there's lots of planned growth and unplanned growth, I guess, in the non-household sector, and assessing and defining that within water resource management plans is kind of inconsistent, I guess, across different water companies in different kind of areas of the country. And there's particular interest within the Oxford or Cambridge area because of some kind of high growth sectors that we're likely to see. Reasons for the project. It's been flagged as an evidence gap. So we're trying to fill that evidence gap. We would like to try and have a comprehensive understanding of non-household water demand projections, as we'll see when I talk about the results of the project. Not as easy as it probably sounds. We're hoping to kind of do this as an incremental approach. We picked a few sectors to kind of have a look at within this kind of test and trial project to see if it could kind of give us a kickstart into doing it across other sectors. If you could just click on, please, Jules. Just going to give a couple of examples of the sectors that we looked at. So one of the sectors we looked at was biomedical businesses. As you might or might not know, Cambridge and Oxford University both have kind of big biomedical kind of spin-off campuses, and they're building lots more all the time. So there's lots of research in things like AstraZeneca, for example, are based within our geography, and they're kind of quite a lot of hubs around that. So we built on some work that was done by the old Oxford to Cambridge Pan-Regional Partnership, which looked at a kind of a business premises study, basically looking at how to forecast the need for these biomedical campuses for kind of supporting planned growth. We produced two forecasts from this. So one being based on historic activity, and you see that's quite a slow increase in water, but it does still increase in water demand over time. We also did another one by looking at what's in the current planning system and trying to forecast based on everything in the planning system being developed within the next 5 years and then projecting that moving forward. As you can see, there's quite a big range between the two different forecasting techniques there. So it kind of shows the uncertainty that we've got in this area. Go to the next one, please, Jules. And this is food and drink. So one of the big challenges with forecasting food and drink is that the businesses themselves basically have very limited growth plans that are shareable. Some of them are commercially sensitive, but majority of businesses kind of fed back to us that they don't really plan beyond 5-10 years because they're so consumer driven in terms of what their kind of future development would look like. So we tried to use some statistical relationships, which is a fairly established way of trying to forecast, but we tried to kind of build a little bit more detail into it using the Mosul data. So Mosul, as hopefully some of you are aware, are the people who the market operator for the non-household water supply sector. Mosul's fairly new, so it was kind of introduced in 2017. So there's only a fairly limited amount of historical data, which made statistical relationships quite hard to find, particularly kind of with COVID being in the middle of that and the disruption that had, and it kind of messed up any statistical analysis that we could pull out. But as Mosul kind of continues, they're kind of data set is getting bigger and better all the time. So hopefully this will mean there will be, a much more kind of robust ability to forecast in the future for this type of kind of statistical relationship. If you could click on, please, Giles. I'm just going to kind of move on to two kind of added value bits that we kind of developed through the project. So we did look at forecasting water demand from data centers. It was quite a challenging activity to do. We spoke to quite a few data center owners and operators within the area, and very limited kind of ambition to grow the businesses and to open new water cooled centers within the corridor. Kind of is quite a challenging situation where we've got an AI zone located within the corridor, but we couldn't quite find anyone who's saying that they're going to be building a data center there. But we started to look at the water energy balance and the trade-offs between the two. The two different data center operators kind of explained that the more water you use, the less energy you use, because they're more kind of efficient at running at lower temperatures that water can get them down to. So there's a clear trade-off there between kind of water demand and energy and carbon impacts. So that's something that needs to be considered moving forward. The other thing that was highlighted was the hybrid approach that most data centers are starting to favor. So optimizing performance and kind of carbon balance. Data centers often use kind of air cooling during the kind of most of the year, but then during kind of hotter periods, they'll use some water cooling to kind of pull them down to temperature. That's a way of kind of balancing them off. But there is a real challenge there when we're looking at water resource planning, is that actually data centers, if taking that approach on an annual basis, will use fairly little water. As you can see there, currently they're using less than 1% of the non-household consumption within the corridor. But it will be then peak kind of demand periods where you've got a heat wave where water companies are already struggling to meet demand, or where rivers are kind of in low flow scenarios. That's when the data centers, if operating with a hybrid approach, will want most water. So it's quite a difficult kind of a planning thing that needs to be considered as you develop more and more data centers, I guess, across the area. Thank you, Jules. Just the last one from me then on this was just a way of trying to explore the local authority planning portals to pull out kind of what's coming up in terms of non-household. So it doesn't stretch out as far as a water resource management plan, so it's not going out 25, 40 years. It's kind of what's coming up in the next 5 years, what's in planning at the moment. And we explored using an AI tool to extract the data, just to try and take some of the manual process away. We think that it could be applied. There could be some improvements that could be made, particularly with trying to make sure that planning application forms are consistent across local authorities. Also a case around the different planning portals and the kind of the underlying kind of setup of them. So we used a platform called iDocs, and apparently, according to our research, it was 70% of the UK local authorities use that solution for planning purposes. So it's quite a widespread use. We applied it in 3 different planning authorities within our area, pulled out 67 planning applications that had data center kind of in them and are expected to kind of go through planning within the next 5 years. We excluded 49 of them based on kind of a manual validation. That was because it was things like changing the sign on the outside. So we just kept 18, which felt like they would have an impact on water resources. So this just, gives an example of how we can kind of start to use things like AI to pull out a bit more value and try and make sure at least we know what's in planning if we can't kind of forecast beyond that. And at that point, I think I'm going to hand over to Jules, and hopefully you're able to talk and can talk us through some of our team's engagement updates.
I'm afraid we're struggling to hear you, Jules. Can you, if where you have the audio button, there's a little arrow. If you click on that, can you just check that your microphone is the right one connected? No, sorry, we're still not hearing. Oh,
Can you hear me now?
yes.
I'll take these off. So the headphone's not working. apologies for the technical issues earlier. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm now going to be able to show you some of the comms and engagement work that we've done. So I will. So one of the key things that we've been working on in our team is to be able to share the projects in a really clear and engaging way that is really easy to understand and tailored to the different groups of people that might be interested. So we've developed this integrated water management hub. And rather than just showing it to you on the slide, I'm going to take you hopefully to the webpage and run you through how it works and what we've got on there. So it's going to minimize this quickly. So this is our homepage where you come to the integrated water management hub that's integrated within the rest of our website. And we'll send a link through to this afterwards, so it's easy for everyone to access. And on here you can have a look, and depending on which area that you work in, you can click on the one that's most relevant to you. I'm going to click on I've got a broader perspective today. And then here you get a little bit of information about what's on the page. And then each of the different projects that we've been working on are displayed here. And as we develop and complete other projects, we'll be adding them to this webpage so that you can continue to look through the work that we've been creating. I'm going to click on the Maximising Planning for Water project now, and each page is similar to this. So whichever project you click on, you get a little bit of information about the project to start with. We've then identified some key messages. So if someone doesn't have a lot of time, just reading these key messages gives you a little bit of an oversight of what we've found, and also what actions can be taken as a result of the work that we've done. And then there's options for different levels of information below. So there's an overview document here. And in this overview document, again, if someone hasn't got too much time, this gives a really quick summary of the project, highlighting some of the key things that we have learnt. Each one will give a bit of an introduction, talk about the challenges that we're trying to, that are being faced, and the project's ambition to be able to address some of those. And then these are quick documents with links through to different sections. So you can see on this, for example, on this one, we've got the different stages of the project, and some of the outcomes and recommendations are at the end. And one of the key recommendations from this was our Planning and Water Toolkit, which you can link to it from here, and then people can download to use that. And that was aimed at local authorities to help with the planning system. And then you can go back to the previous page. And then if you want more information, then all of our technical documents are available as well. So you can read those in much more detail. And I'll just see if I can go back to our presentation more smoothly. Here we go. So yeah, that's one of the main things that we've got for communications and engagement. We are working on putting together a second external website where we give more frequent updates using Engagement HQ. That's in progress at the moment, and we hope to be able to publish that later this year. And then I won't show you all of the rest of the website, but we've got lots of other information on there for people to explore for the areas you're interested in. And I'll pass over to Brianne now. Just going to talk to you about the joining up drainage, wastewater and surface water management plans.
Hi, thank you very much, Jules. Hi, everyone. So I'm Brianne Valley, Water Planning and Partnership Project Lead for the Oxford Cambridge team. Before I delve into the specific of one of our other projects, I just wanted to provide you with a brief overview of drainage wastewater management plans. Jules, you can move on to the next slides, please. So the Drainage Wastewater Management Plan, or DWMP, are the strategic plans designed to ensure that our drainage and wastewater infrastructure or system remain robust and resilient for at least the next 25 years. And for those that are familiar with the Water Resources Management Plan, they're kind of the equivalent before wastewater. There was a non-statutory Cycle 1 plans that have been developed in the last few years. And under the Environment Act, they are now a statutory requirement, giving them a central role in shaping the future investment and the infrastructure planning. Work is being led by water and sewage companies, but their success really depends on collaboration of quite a few organisations, including the Environment Agency, local authorities, and many others, and some of you may be on the line today. Each plan assesses current and future capacity, identifies risk, and sets out measures to improve resilience. They're a vital tool for integrated water management and long-term environmental planning. Next slide, please, Jules. You've probably gathered that by now, what I mean by integration today is a more joined-up approach to our work to give us more chances to improve and enhance the environment. The Cunliffe Review recently highlighted that joining up is essential for future challenges. So for one of our projects, we are focusing on the drainage wastewater management plan and the overlap with surface water planning, be it sort of the evidence or the plans developed by the local authority, and that is sort of the lead local authorities or the local planning authorities. The Venn diagram on the slide highlights some of the elements that can be joined up in this process. Next slide, please, Jules. So for the Joining Up project, we aim to demonstrate the value of working collaboratively to solve problems and help us deliver more with fewer resources. We're exploring ways of doing things and testing it in a place, and that place is in Farcotton and Delapre in West Northamptonshire. Collaboration is a key part of the project, and you can see some of our project partners here on the slides. We're fortunate to have a number of leads from lead local authorities to ensure that the approach that is being tested in a place can be replicated in a geography, but also hopefully beyond. The scope has been jointly written, and all partners steer the project and help disseminate emerging learning and learning once the project will complete. Arup is our delivery partner on this project, and they are developing the approach, which so far consists of 10 stages flow diagram that addresses the full spectrum of collaboration, starting with the initial project IDs using spatial data up to the project delivery. That approach takes into account varying levels of maturity of plans, evidence, and relationships. Next slide, please, Jules. Mindful of time, I won't go into a lot of the details on those slides because I want to leave some time for questions, but we've currently got 4 phases. So the first one was about understanding existing relationship gaps in joint working, evidence and risk. And there's quite a lot of interesting stuff that we found using interviews and conducting some research, and we've found sort of the usual suspects in there in terms of highlighting the importance of overlapping hotspots or data and information availability and quality, and the need to improve communication structures and organizational alignments, for example. So during phase 2 of the project over the summer, Arup explores sort of different ways of bringing together parts of the water management planning, and those will be detailed in some of our project reporting. And we've just concluded sort of trialling in a place that approach. And we are in discussion with Arup and our project partners to extend the project by a few months in a new year, just to make sure that we capture the learning of trialling that approach in a place and really capture some of the recommendation for developing what we suggest is the final approach. So what we get at the end is that approach to integrate in the shape of a flow diagram, and also some ideas for multi-benefit interventions for West Northamptonshire and Anglian Water to take further. So far, the project has helped improve professional relationship, highlighted key barriers, so in a sense identified challenges that limit progress, and data sharing, sadly, I think is still one of the hurdle that we've come across. And also the project has shed the light on some efficiencies that can be proposed throughout sort of the process. I think I'm on with that slide. But before handing back over to our host, Ethne, I just wanted to put a quote out there for you to read, which is from Debbie Bell. Debbie is one of the key project partner, and she's a drainage wastewater management lead for Anglian Water. And I think Debbie is happy to be part of the project, and it shows how working together can lead to smarter, more integrated solution. And I'll let you read the rest, just mindful of time. And Ethne, feel free to take the line back in a minute or so.
Great. Thank you so much, Brianne, and thanks to all of you for your presentation. That was really interesting hearing about all of the projects that are falling in the Oxcam region and the ways in which you're supporting integrated water management across different areas. So thank you so much for that. I'd really like to invite our attendees to put the questions in the Q&A box. If your question is for a particular person, please do specify that in the question. I can see there's already some coming in, but I'm going to take chair's privilege and ask the first question, if that's all right with you. So obviously there's a lot of projects that kind of fall under this integrated water management kind of overall project. And you touched there a bit, Brianne, about the different partners and organisations that you've been working with. But I wonder if you could reflect a little bit more broadly, maybe this is one for you, Dan, on the whole project, the kinds of organisations and groups that you've been engaging with throughout to really bring in this integrated and holistic approach.
Yeah, so I think a kind of a good example of that is our program board that was set up to direct and shape the projects. That includes members of various sectors across the geography. So we work with representatives of all of the water companies across the patch. That's Affinity, Cambridge, as well as Anglian and Thames as well. And we're also linking in with Water Resource East and South East, various government departments, as well as links into other key stakeholders, such as planners and the NFU and PAS as examples as well. So that's our kind of program board, and then similarly we've held a series of external events where we've brought it together kind of wider stakeholders to engage in the program, and say that be they kind of links into kind of local planning authorities or also into, for example, environmental NGOs. So we've held a recent event focused around our maximising planning for water project earlier in the year, which a number of local stakeholders were also invited to. Hopefully that answers your question.
No, that's great. Yeah, that's really useful to get an idea of the types of people being engaged with. Thank you. This is a more specific question from one of our attendees. So rainwater harvesting was mentioned on your slides, and they're just asking, why is rainwater harvesting only being used at the moment as something for non-household use? Is there also plans to think about rainwater harvesting for household use?
I can come in on this one, I think. So we looked at rainwater harvesting in non-household because of the retrofitting aspect of that project. So the project was looking at retrofitting an existing property stock, and retrofitting in people's houses means you have to talk to lots of individual homeowners, and the value you get from each individual kind of win, I guess, for getting someone to install it is a bit less. The idea was that with businesses and non-household, they're a lot larger roof areas. They've often got a lot more capacity for space for installing tanks retrospectively. So that's why we were looking at that. We are actually working with DEFRA colleagues at the moment, and we're running a scope which is looking at the potential of rainwater harvesting in new housing developments and the idea of installing dual pipe systems within new developments. So the idea of that research project is looking how kind of cost efficient it is to start installing dual pipe systems to be able to take rainwater harvesting within domestics before there's a legislation change that would allow it. So at the moment, you can't collect and supply two different sources of supply into a house because of kind of clean drinking water provisions within the kind of the legal framework that we work within. So DEFRA are looking at that at the moment, and we're starting projects to look at kind of, can we start future-proofing our houses, I guess, now, ready for that to start coming in. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. And one for you as well, Brianne, which is around the drainage wastewater management plans that you talked about. You briefly touched on the fact that kind of multiple benefits from interventions was being explored as part of the project. I wonder if you could give a little bit more information about some of those multiple benefits that had been explored through these drainage wastewater management plans that kind of go beyond just wastewater management.
So I think as part of the project is really ensuring that we're moving away perhaps from grey solution where that's appropriate, and that nature-based solution are being considered, and we are exploring ways to align with a number of priorities, not just sort of the drainage wastewater management plan, but where sort of the surface water plans or local authorities has got sort of priorities and needs. So that's really what we are trying to achieve, is to ensure that the solutions being developed help align with a number of plans and strategies, and that what's being delivered is mostly focused on achieving multi-benefits on the ground in terms of flood risk reductions or water quality improvements, etc.
That's really useful. Thank you. Something that I know the FWR community are really big advocates for is this taking a multiple benefits approach. So that's great to hear. A comment and question from an attendee here saying really important, great work that will substantially improve matters. Dan, you highlighted water supply and wastewater treatment constraints. What are the full costs of securing the additional water and water treatment needed after your more efficient collaborative approach, and who will bear these costs, including in particular the new developments to ensure they are truly sustainable?
So I think on that, we're very careful not to kind of cross over into water company responsibility. So I might be slightly avoiding the question in some ways. So we're highlighting the potential for various elements of kind of integrated approach. And then as we're developing some of them with water companies, or they're on our program board, it's then kind of demonstrating the potential value of that. And then it's the opportunity, if you like, to enable water companies to pick that up and kind of clarify exactly what it is. But we're really drawing out the value of integration. I mean, a lot of our projects, as I say, through the project that Brianne introduced as an example, and similarly through kind of rainwater harvesting, kind of demonstrating the value that could provide to water companies, both from a water supply perspective, but also from kind of an impact on the drainage networks as well. So the kind of understanding, I know there's a few people who've kind of worked on a kind of program on the call this afternoon as well, is that there will be efficiencies to be kind of secured, I think, through applying this effectively. But as always, I think the devil's in the detail with regards to cost and the existing networks and future demands with regards to new developments as well. And that's almost another question in itself with regards to new developments that's mentioned, I think, in terms of being able to kind of take that strategic approach to planning for water infrastructure as part of a local plan perspective. And we are kind of reviewing, I guess, our kind of water cycle strategy guidance as a business at the moment, recognising we might need to consider how we take a more integrated approach to water management to local plans as well. But I don't know if the team would like to add anything else to that.
No, that's great. All right. Thank you very much, Dan. That's really useful. One of the things that was mentioned in the framework on your slides was around water quality as well. One of our attendees was just asking if someone could kind of expand a little bit more about the work that's being done around water quality in these projects.
Kerry, did you want to pick up on one of our projects that we're currently scoping on at the moment with regards to water quality and the water visualizer?
Yeah, I can do. So we've got a couple of projects which we're scoping at the moment. So one of the projects is building on a tool that the Environment Agency have just released about sustainable abstraction. So it's a water resource tool, and it's looking at how we kind of optimize abstraction reductions in line with the environmental destination that the Environment Agency are kind of championing at the moment. What we're looking at doing with kind of some development time internally is to build in some water quality elements to that, so that when the water resource planners are considering kind of whether to reduce an abstraction license in one location or another and trying to work out where the best one to do it, water quality is also considered in that thinking. So that's one way we're trying to integrate the thinking across the two We're also working with our internal developers. I don't know if the person asking the question is familiar with SAGES modelling, which is the water quality modelling that the Environment Agency use for their kind of regulatory response to permit applications and things like that. We're looking at whether we can build a kind of an add-on to it that looks at environmental capacity. So looking at, okay, the permits say that you can kind of release more effluent or whatever it would be into this river, but actually what's the environment saying? Can the environment actually consider and kind of take in that added kind of effluent, or are there locations where current permit limits are above and beyond where the environmental capacity is? We're in the very early stages of scoping that work, and we're talking to the developers of the SAGES modelling to see if that is something that's possible. So just to be clear, that wouldn't be a replacement for permit applications. It's kind of a first draft screening kind of additional bit of work. I think that's the two projects you were thinking of, Dan. I don't know if there's another one that you wanted to bring in.
I don't think so. We've mentioned, as I say, the kind of impact of rainwater harvesting as well, which kind of has an effect on storm overflow reductions and volumes as well. I think they're the primary bits, in addition to the joining up project. So
that's great
there, Ethne. Yep.
Great, thank you. And I'm just going to try and sneak in one more question, if that's all right, before we finish for the day. And this one might be best placed for you, Brianne, which is you mentioned around data sharing being identified as a barrier to some of the work that you were doing. I wonder if you could just expand a little bit more around was it around kind of commercial data sensitivity? Was it around data interoperability? And are there any data sharing systems already in place to kind of ensure consistent collaboration?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ethne. So I think that's a good question, and it's almost a bit sad that in 2025 it feels like it is still sort of a blocker, an issue, but there's quite a bit of work sort of happening in the background. I think if I'm correct in the name, is the Open Data Institute is doing quite a lot of work around the STREAM initiative to ensure that where possible, I guess the principles that govern the kind of good data sharing are being promoted and used by partners involved, including sort of the water and sewage companies. Interestingly enough, I guess used or had a look at some of the learning that Greater Manchester Combined Authority did on a project looking at asset register and the data that sort of sits behind that, and we're looking at I guess signposting anyone that obviously will end up reading or reporting and looking into a bit more about what they can do to sort of help those barriers, depending on, again, the level of maturity that are at and some of the relationships that they have. So there's quite a lot, and I haven't got the sort of the detail in front of me, but there's probably like really basic things that can be done in terms of the way that the information is known, whether or not it is available as open data or restricted, as you say, looking at sort of data sharing agreement between organizations. So yeah, we're sort of touching upon some of those elements, but I think it's fair to say that we've all got a responsibility perhaps in upskilling and making sure that we are sort of up to date with what we can and can't do, so that it doesn't continues to be sort of a blocker for collaborations going forward.
That's really useful. Thank you so much. And a massive thank you to all of you. Dan, Kerry, Jules, Brianne, it's been great to have you here today. And thank you so much for presenting. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question. We are now out of time. But the questions will be passed on, and if we can get, and I can let anyone know some answers that come back from that as well. As you'll be aware, this webinar has been recorded and it will be made available on our YouTube channel. And if you are watching the recording on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel, like the video, and hit the bell to gain notifications of new content. The next IES event is on the 18th of December and is on coral skeletons to autonomous sensors monitoring ocean acidification. And you can register for this on the IES website. If you're an IES member, don't forget to record your attendance at this webinar in our CPD tool, which you can find in the IES members area of the website. And if you're not a member, please do consider joining the IES to support your professional development and our work. I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Another massive thank you to all of you. Have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.